Hi, everybody. It's Marjorie Waldo with Culture Under Fire, making a case for the arts. Today, we're recording episode 23, Culture Under Policy, What's at Stake for Communities. What really makes a city alive? Every gallery, performance, and mural tells a bigger story, one that drives local business and community growth. Today, in this episode, I am fortunate to sit with Senator Carlos Guillermo Smith for a wide-ranging conversation on how state-level decisions shape local communities. From Florida Statute Chapter 2026-43, which was Senate Bill 1134, to proposed changes in property tax policy and the future of state grant funding, this discussion will explore how these issues intersect with arts and cultural organizations, public expression, and the sustainability of community-based programs. Together, we're going to examine what's at stake for local leaders, creatives, and the communities they serve. Thank you so much, Senator Smith, for joining us. It's an honor.
Thank you, Marjorie, for having me. It's great to be streaming in, I guess, from Central Florida in Orlando, which is the Senate district I represent up in the Florida Senate.
No, we're really grateful you could do it. You amaze me because you are extremely accessible to people, not just in your district, but outside of your district. I've seen you in multiple formats, like at the Florida Professional Presenters Consortium or the Florida Cultural Alliance, as well as got to meet you in person in Tallahassee in January. Very nice to
During
know
the crazy of the legislative session, yes.
Yeah.
You did come up all the way to Tallahassee from Delray Beach.
And you made time for us, so I'm very grateful. So let me brag about your background a little. You were born in South Florida. Where in South Florida, can I ask?
Well, I was born at Broward Hospital, but basically grew up in West Boca Raton.
Oh, wow. Right down the street. Yeah.
I'm a proud graduate of Palm Beach County Public Schools Spanish River High School class of 99. Go Sharks.
Oh, my son graduated from Spanish River. My daughter from Atlantic High School in Delray, but Isaac went to Spanish River as well. And you got your bachelor's in science from UCF, University of Central Florida.
Yes. Go Knights, charge on, class of 2003. I graduated from the University of Central Florida and proud to represent my alma mater in the Florida Senate.
Isn't that wonderful? Okay. So you've been a trusted voice for our community in Tallahassee for more than a decade. You've served in the Florida House of Representatives from 2016 to 2022. And you were elected to the Senate representing District 17 in November of 2024. And you are the vice chair of the Criminal Justice Committee.
Correct.
I don't think I realized that.
They have me busy up in the Florida Senate. I'm telling you.
I know it. I know it. You are a respected civil rights leader who has championed housing affordability, tourism development tax reform, and state funding for the arts. And you've been recognized by the Florida Alliance for Arts Education and the Florida Cultural Alliance for your advocacy. In addition to your legislative work, you serve as the senior advisor to Equality Florida, and you sit on the board of the Orlando Philharmonic Orchestra, which I also didn't know until I read your bio. You live in East Orlando with your husband, Jarek Mediavilla. How did I do?
Oh, you got it.
Did
Very
I?
good.
Okay. An educator from Corozal, Puerto Rico. So welcome to Culture Under Fire. I'm really glad you're here.
It's good to be here. Let's chat. About all the things.
Let's chat. Talk general first. What in the world made you want to be in political office? Are you just a glutton for punishment?
Yeah, I think you have to be a little bit crazy to run for public office, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Actually, yeah. So a lot of people ask me this question, and it's a funny story. I used to manage a Men's Warehouse store for 8 years before I got involved in community organizing and in politics. That's right. And basically, it was President Obama's election in 2008 that really inspired me to get more involved. I went to the inauguration, my first time ever in my life, in D.C. in January of 2009. And when I left D.C., I just kind of caught that political bug. I wanted to help him implement his agenda of expanding healthcare and protecting our communities from gun violence. And it was just, I didn't know how to get involved. I was a manager at the Men's Warehouse at the time. And so I just started volunteering for a lot of advocacy organizations, civically engaged organizations that were working on the issues that I cared about. And that uh, got me access to a lot of different spaces. I met a lot of different people. And eventually I was actually hired to be a legislative assistant for a former member of the Florida House of Representatives. So as a member of staff, I really learned the ropes in Tallahassee until an opportunity presented itself in the 2016 election cycle that swept me into public office for the first time. It was a bittersweet election night. My first my first election night that I won an election was November 2016, my election to the Florida House of Representatives. Our election made history. I was the first openly LGBTQ Latino lawmaker ever elected to the legislature. And if you turn back the clock, thank you. If you turn back the clock and understand where we were in November 2016, it was just months after the horrific tragedy at Pulse nightclub here in Orlando. And so having representation for this community that I represent in particular was really important and really meaningful, and a responsibility I've taken very seriously, but also kind of a bittersweet election night, my first election night in 2016, because it was the same night that Donald Trump was elected president for part one. And so that was a wake up call
by
for
that.
me.
Right.
Yes, it was a wake up call for me for sure.
Yeah.
And then my second big election night was when I got elected to the Senate, which also coincided with
the
Trump's
second administration
as president, which is just so strange.
It's an alignment. It's supposed to keep you motivated. I know that President Obama did a speech. He spoke in Delray Beach at the tennis center before the first election, and I took my kids out of school and we waited in a line that went around the block twice. And got to see him. And I could imagine that would be, it inspired me in a different way, not to run for office, but I found his words inspirational, and watching him work for those 8 years inspirational. So I could see how that would make you line up at the door to take the hits, because it is hard to be in politics, especially if you're driven to create change and support historically underrepresented demographics. And that's a lot of what you do. I mean, you go above and beyond, though. You really do. A lot of politicians don't go outside of their district, and you are willing, like this. I mean, I'm not even close to your district, but you're here to help me educate the people who listen to our podcast and who love the work at Arts Garage. So I'm really grateful. Really grateful.
Thank you, Marjorie. Well, some of the issues that we're going to discuss are of statewide significance that reach well beyond the borders of my Senate district that I represent here in Orlando. So it's an important conversation to have.
I agree. And I think we should jump right in with the property tax referendum, the Save Our Homes from Excessive Property Taxes. Do you want to start there, or should we circle back and do something else?
No, please,
let's jump right in.
That's all I hear about.
A lot of people, and I'm talking to people when I go to get my pedicure or I go to the grocery store, and they are very excited about this referendum and voting yes for it, because they see, and I don't know if they've gone on the calculator that you can access and figure out how much you will in fact make it back if you are not charged tax dollars for a portion of your homestead. But they're super excited, and before a conversation didn't understand that there would be any negative side. So I think people here save money and they want to do that. Of course, we all do, right? But I think the referendum deserves some explanation, because I don't think it's as clear cut as that. So just take the floor and tell me what you think it's important for Floridians to know before they vote.
Well, look, thank you for bringing this topic up, because the affordability crisis is top of mind for everyday Floridians. The cost of living is going through the roof.
Absolutely.
The cost of everything, whether it is property insurance rates, which is actually what we hear a lot of frustration around. You see the price of gas is obviously through the roof because of this war of choice in Iran,
right.
but also just the cost of everyday goods and people being unable or are struggling to pay their bills is what is top of mind for everyone. And when people see the potential savings that they may get just from their property tax bill under this proposal, it's understandable why they would be excited, but it's not the full story, unfortunately. And we're really just skimming the surface of what would happen as a state if we enacted this transformational policy that changes how we collect taxes in the state of Florida and what the tax base is. Ultimately, what we're looking at is a proposal that creates a massive tax shift, not a tax break. Because what we know is that property taxes pay for critical vital services, including road maintenance, including first responders, police and fire, water infrastructure. There's a lot of very critical things that people rely on every single day that are funded by property taxes. So what we have to understand first is that there is no replacement revenue stream for this proposal. We have just received finally a fiscal impact analysis after the bill was passed by legislators, by the way. We did not have access to this information.
Which makes no sense to approve what you don't know the impact of, right?
Yeah, we voted to put this on the ballot, although I voted against it because I thought it was not researched and it was not well vetted by lawmakers, which is our responsibility before we put a proposal like this in front of voters.
Right.
But since then, now we have the fiscal impact from the Revenue Estimating Conference, which is our state budget economists. And they say that the impact on local services will be $12 billion. That's billion with a B. And basically what that means is
throughout the state.
Throughout the state, that local governments will face a $12 billion shortfall, and they will be that much less able to provide critical services. So where do they go from that is the question. And like, well, okay, if they don't get this revenue to fund police and fire and other critical services, they're going to get it from somewhere, right?
They have to.
That's where the tax shift. Exactly. They have to, Marjorie. The tax shift comes into play. If they can't collect it from homestead property taxes, they will increase fees. They will increase new assessments. They will increase sales taxes, which there is a local option for sales taxes as well. And really the cost of everything will go up. So that's why we say it's not really a tax break. It's actually a tax shift. And in my opinion, it's the biggest defund the police and fire proposal in Florida history.
Isn't that
because that's
curious?
Exactly what it is.
I think it's very curious because the same people who pushed this forward are completely, as they should be, against, quote, defunding the police, right? I've heard so many different people talk about this, and there are two things. One is that there's no way you can always trim your budget, right? You can trim it.
Absolutely.
In a nonprofit. And I
our
think
local government should as well.
Of course, we all should look and see where the fat is and cut it, right? But as a nonprofit, I know my budget's already pretty skinny. So we've already we spend most of our money on performances, artist fees, and salaries of the people who work at our organization. And we're proud to say a lot of them stay for a long time and are very skilled when they come. So that means that they're worth retaining, and that costs money. So I don't know where we would cut if I were to receive a similar percentage cut in my budget, other than programs and people. That's the only thing you can do. So I'm not sure what cities are supposed to do other than tax us in other ways. And my understanding is that the impact on us individually as citizens of Florida will be greater with the tax shift, as you call it, than it is currently with paying property taxes. It sounds like we could see a bigger hit.
Absolutely. And the hit will vary depending on what city or county you live in, because every municipality and every local government has a different diversity of revenue sources,
Yep.
if you will. So I will just use my region as an example. Again, I'm a senator that represents the Orlando area up in Tallahassee. The city of Orlando is, more of an urban city.
Yes.
There's a very healthy mix of homestead property tax revenue that comes in before this amendment passes, of course.
Yes.
And there's a lot of corporations, obviously Disney and all the theme parks are here, and also businesses. So there's a diverse revenue base and a tax base for the county, which isn't to say that they won't be hit, but they will be able to withstand some of these changes to their revenue sources in ways that other more suburban areas of the state will be able to. So, they refer to some of these suburban cities and counties as bedroom communities, which really is just slang or like industry talk for a city or county that relies mostly on homestead residential property tax revenue.
Right.
There's not that many businesses in the region, and so they're just almost entirely reliant on those bedroom community property tax revenue. So you're going to see a variation in how deeply one city or one county is impacted versus another. But what would they do to respond to this? So what types of who would face the brunt of some of the tax increases that come as a result of this? Well, if you're not a homestead property, then you will likely see a tax increase. So who is not a homestead property? All business owners.
Right.
So whether you're a small business or whether you're a large business, you will see your property tax, your millage rate for that property that you own go up.
Right.
That can affect renters as well. 30% of Florida residents are renters. They pay their rent to a landlord who owns the property, and it is not a homestead property for that property owner. So when they have a much higher property tax bill, let's say for the apartment complex that they own and they rent out, they will unequivocally pass that.
It rolls down.
Pass that increase down to the renter and the tenant, which again is 30% of Florida residents who are renters. Now, just because your homestead is seeing a larger exemption here does not mean that you won't see a millage rate change either, or new assessments or new fees.
Right.
I'll just use myself as an example. The value of our home is approximately $500,000. This proposal exempts $150,000 in year one and $250,000 in year two. So we won't see our property tax responsibility eliminated in this example. But what we may see is our local government will increase the millage rate for the remaining taxable value on our property.
I see.
And they'll do that potentially across the board.
See.
They can also create new fees and new assessments. If we need a road in our neighborhood or near our neighborhood repaved, they can impose an assessment on our entire community to help pay for that. If there's let's say I do what I often do, which is have a lot of fun in the kitchen and set off my smoke detector, and then the local fire rescue shows up.
Right.
I can get hacked with a $1,500 emergency service bill as a result of that, because our property taxes are no longer paying enough for what they need to cover these emergency services. I'm sorry to get into so many scenarios and details, but I think it's important to give people examples
I
of
agree.
how local governments will get creative to make up the revenue and how it will cost you.
They're already talking about it. There's been a lot of news coming out of different cities, Boca Raton near us and Fort Lauderdale, where they're already running scenarios of how they will respond if they lose. They're figuring out what the dollar value is that they will lose if the referendum passes and how they will likely some options for how they can respond to it. One of the things I heard, you talked about those bedroom communities that sort of splinter off from the urban areas, and they're largely owned by a small group of people. So I've heard that if they lose property tax, there's no way to recover that really. Those places will bankrupt is what I've heard, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, and they'll have to be absorbed by other municipalities because they won't be able to act independently. I don't know if that's an accurate statement or not.
It's going to be on a case-by-case basis. There's conversation about the consolidation of city services or county services with other municipalities, certainly. But ultimately, at the end of the day, some communities may face the tough decision of whether their city or their local town will continue to exist at all. Now, what's misleading about this ballot initiative when you look at the text of the language is there's a lot of very misleading language in here that gives voters the impression that there will be dollars and funds set aside from state government in Tallahassee to make these municipalities whole if they're unable to fund police and fire.
Right.
That's simply not true.
Well, my understanding is the state's going to be in crisis, not in necessarily 26, 27, but 27, 28. Correct?
That's right. If the idea is that the state is going to bail out a city that can't fund police after we eliminate these property taxes, then you have to think that the state is flush with resources.
Right.
We are not. According to the Revenue Estimating Conference and our state economists, in the next fiscal year, Florida is facing a $1.5 billion budget shortfall.
Oh my God.
And in the following fiscal year, we are facing a nearly $7 billion budget shortfall as a state.
Yep.
So we do not have the resources just lying around for us to be able to bail out cities and counties who can no longer fund core services if this amendment passes.
Well, it's worrisome too, because I think it's another example, and almost everyone, I sit through a lot of our city commissions in Delray Beach, our meetings, and across the aisle, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle the representatives of our town are sitting on, what side they're sitting on, none of them want to lose home rule. And what this feels like is an across-the-board decision for everyone in our state when each one of our municipalities has such different needs that it's hard to have a one-size-fits-all. So I think a lot of people are very afraid.
That's right. And look, the concern about local control, home rule, and like trying to stop this trend of state preemption of local government is a very academic conversation. But in real life, here's what it means. What it means is if cities and counties no longer have the ability to fund their own critical services and they have to rely on Tallahassee to do basic local government functions, it makes the governor of the state of Florida basically the mayor of every city in the state.
Right.
Doesn't matter who you elect to your county commission. It doesn't matter who you elect as mayor of your local city, because they will be beholden to what Tallahassee and the governor say about what funds they will be allowed to receive from the state, if they receive any at all, to perform these core services. So when you think about it from a 10,000-foot view, what this is not only a tax shift for homeowners rather than a tax cut, but when it comes to the structure of our government, our democracy, it's really a massive power grab.
It
It is a
feels that
power
way.
grab from state government that will basically make local governments irrelevant because Tallahassee is now kingmaker on how we fund local services across the state.
It's a scary proposal because that would change everything about the way we all live in each of our cities, right? I think it will change a lot of that because we will not have the ability to elect who we believe represents us the way we would like to be represented. We will be relying.
Right.
I mean, you can elect the people in the state too, but the state's large and diverse, and you usually choose a locality that fits your vibe, right? That makes you feel good, and you feel that the people who live there are people you want to be neighbors to. And if you put it all at the state level, then you're losing that ability.
Yeah, look, I think ultimately at the end of the day, when you look at every state in this country, taxes are a three-legged stool.
Yeah.
You basically get your revenue to fund services from government that are important to our quality of life and to keep us safe. It comes from sales tax, it comes from property taxes, and it comes from state income tax. Florida is one of the handful of states that does not have an income tax. So we've been operating on a two-legged stool
for a long
some
time.
Now what we're doing is we are almost eliminating or just eviscerating one of the only two legs in the stool that we have.
Right.
That makes this honestly a live experiment. We don't know what
That's
we
a
don't
scary
know.
thing. It's a scary
we don't
thing.
know what we don't know, and there's just a lot of other unintended consequences. We could sit here and talk all day about some of the other things that you just don't think about. And I just want to reiterate that this is a tax shift. A lot of people certainly will have a lower property tax bill. I'm not arguing that they won't. I'm saying it'll be offset by an increase in millage rates, in other fees, in other assessments, and other sales tax, where many people may actually end up paying more. But even beyond that, when you look at local policy, let's ask ourselves, how does eliminating property taxes in this way or substantially reducing it, how does it impact local funding for the arts? How does it impact the creation of affordable housing and how governments want to create more starter homes in their region? Let's think about it. We have an affordable housing crisis in the state of Florida. Local governments are rightfully always looking for opportunities where they can create new starter homes, right? It's getting harder for families to find the right priced starter home, to start a family, to own their first home. If you take away the property tax revenue in this way, now you're going to have local governments who are going to be faced with a disincentive for creating affordable housing and starter homes. Why?
Absolutely.
Because if you're an existing city like Delray and there is a plot of land in the city of Delray Beach that can be rezoned and can be developed, and you have a proposal to build new starter homes that are affordable homes that people can purchase that are not going to bring property tax revenue to the city because they're exempt in this way, then the city has no incentive. In fact, they have a disincentive from approving that development because the development will bring added costs to the city government, increase basically impact expenditures from the expansion of roads, the expansion of water infrastructure and stormwater infrastructure, the creation of new schools. All of this is a cost that comes from creating that new construction. And if that cost is not offset by property tax revenue, then they're actually at a deficit if they approve the development for affordable housing. So this is in a way it is disincentivizing our local governments from tackling the affordable housing crisis
And
as
if you
well.
take it 3 or 4 steps out, I mean, we want new young people to move to Florida and invigorate it and bring their dollars to our state and their energy and keep generational things happening. What happens if we make it so that people can't afford to live here? If they just can't afford to live here, then they buy somewhere else. They're going to go out of the state. That's scary stuff.
And it means the cost of living is just going to continue to go up. And we're already seeing this trend in Florida where a lot of younger people are leaving the state. The folks that are moving into the state are wealthier, older Northerners who are coming in that are more able to withstand this cost of living situation that we have in the state of Florida. And so we're already dealing with a lot of these challenges. But look, the disincentive that is created unintentionally with this property tax constitutional amendment for local governments to create more affordable and attainable housing is another major unintended consequence.
Yeah, agreed. I want to talk briefly about the the Florida State Department of Cultural Affairs grant system. And there have been significant changes to how the grants have been offered in the last several years. Do you want to talk about it? I'm trying to be nice. Do you want to talk about it a little?
Absolutely. Well, look, for years and years, the state of Florida has had a working program for state arts grants to fund the many arts groups that we have across the state of Florida. And that process has worked very well. It worked well mostly because these applicants that are looking for state funds to basically help their arts organization continue to survive and create jobs in the state of Florida, these applications for state grants are vetted by subject matter experts known as the Arts Council.
They are not simple grant applications. They are about 30 pages long by the time you finish, because I've received for a long time, the first 8 years I was at Arts Garage, we received a state grant. And it's only been in the last couple of years that we either were, as a result of the governor's veto, the first year things shifted, we lost funds. And then afterwards, there were changes to what you had to promise that made it not even an option for Arts Garage to apply for the funding, even though the funding would be very helpful to us.
They changed the rubric and they politicized how we issue arts grants from the state of Florida. But it was before they did that, it was a program that worked well.
Very well.
If you had merit. And this is, by the way, this program has been studied by the state of Florida itself, and our own data tells us that for every dollar we invest in state arts grants, we get $9 back into the economy. These are job creators. It's not easy to, it's not hard to understand why we're getting so much economic return on our investment for funding the arts. It's because you're funding not only the organization that does the performance or the specific category that they're in, if it is performing arts or maybe it's live music or maybe it's a museum, but what you're also getting is you're getting the individual patron is putting money into the economy to purchase tickets, to go out to dinner, to buy concessions, to pay the valet fee when they go see a show. Like there's so many boats that are lifted from funding of the arts that it has made economic sense for us to do this. Until the governor politicized funding of the arts, he shocked everyone on both sides of the aisle a few years ago when he completely vetoed all of our state arts funding because he wanted to, hit a number on the Republican debate stage when he was running for president. He wanted to say, I vetoed $1 billion in so-called wasteful state government spending. And when he saw the investment we were making in the arts, he saw an easy target. But then he experienced major blowback. Even his own Republican donors, many of whom are philanthropists who support the arts, reached out to him independently and pushed back on this veto of arts funding. So then he looked for an excuse. He looked for a scapegoat, someone to blame for why he made this short-sighted decision to veto arts funding years ago. And he decided to blame the Fringe Fest in Orlando. He decided to say, oh, well, we shouldn't be funding Fringe Fest. But then what this shifted to, Marjorie, was then a state effort to engage in censorship of the arts. They proposed and adopted a new rubric for applying for arts grants in the state of Florida that made applicants agree in their application that all of their programmatic content would be appropriate for all ages.
We stopped applying. You can't do that unless you get rid of your comedians, you get rid of your open mic nights, you get rid of maybe some heavier topics on your theater stage. You really can't promise that, and made the board sign as well. So there felt a little threatening to. There were a couple of people who said, "Well, we're gonna apply anyway." They don't say how they're gonna act on this, right? So we're gonna apply, and we're just gonna ask for forgiveness rather than permission. We didn't do that.
It's censorship, is what it is. Like, there's a difference between content that is appropriate for all ages and age appropriate content.
Correct.
There's a difference.
Big difference.
They didn't say it needs to be age appropriate. That's not what they said. They said it needs to be appropriate for all ages. It means that everything that every arts group comes up with has to be rated G.
And more. Listen. Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
The Holocaust Museum is not rated G.
No, okay? And nor should it be.
It's not appropriate for all ages, just to use an example.
And what I think is interesting is that they didn't just say, this would be okay in my mind. It would still be censorship, but it would be okay. If every dollar I received in a state grant had to be used for all ages friendly programming, I could accept that. But it wasn't that. It said that if you accepted the state funding, all of your shows, regardless of whether they were supported by private donations, foundations, other ticket revenues, all of your programming had to be all ages friendly from the date of your application through the end of the grant year, about an 18-month period based on the due date of the grant. So then if a donor wanted to do support a series of professional touring comedians, I would have to pick only clean, quote, unquote, comedians. It just wasn't logical. It was obviously censorship, right?
It's obviously censorship, and as a result, you didn't apply for the state arts grant, and many other people didn't apply either. And now we have this funding scenario in this budget where, rather than relying on the subject matter experts who scored these applications to determine who's going to get a grant, an arts grant from the state, and who isn't, now that list has been published and determined by subject matter experts, the governor and the secretary of state have cherry-picked their own list of who they want to be funded. That is not how this is supposed to work. Yeah. Politicians should not decide which arts groups have merit and which ones don't. That politicizes the process by definition.
For sure.
It needs to be left to the subject matter experts, the artists, the groups that have, the individuals that have experience in running these arts programs, to know which ones have merit and which ones don't. And that's a process that I think we have a real opportunity to get back.
I hope so.
To be able to hit the reset button when we elect a new governor in November, so that we can get back to a funding program for our arts grants that worked for everyone.
I hope so. I mean, there have been several hits, as an arts organization. It feels like the hits just keep coming, right? And it's not the radio hits. It's not the top 40 list. It feels like we're at risk all the time. And another that I'd like to touch on before we stop, and I want to be respectful of your time, but Florida Statute Chapter 2026-43, which was Senate Bill 1134, which was called casually anti-DEI, right? It was anti-DEI legislation.
Yeah, it was an anti-diversity proposal, no question.
Yeah, and I don't know how we're supposed to recover from so many different things. And I hope that there is at some point a reset where people rethink the purpose of the arts. If you look back for centuries, in all areas of the world, what art was, it always pushed the envelope. It always was intended to make us think. It was always to represent diversity of people and thought and passion. So I'm worried all the time is what it feels like.
Yeah, you're not wrong, Marjorie. This obsession with attacking diversity as if it's a bad thing is really just it's really just sad and disappointing, but also very harmful, because so many of our local governments. This is what this bill does. This anti-diversity bill basically says that if a local city or county commissioner or local government, if they engage and promote in what the state defines as diversity, equity, and inclusion, they can be removed from their elected position by the governor, which is pretty draconian, if you ask me. It's pretty authoritarian. So if your listeners are probably wondering, well, how do they define diversity, equity, and inclusion then? Well, it's vague intentionally. It's intentionally broad, because that's where the censorship comes into play and is so effective. If you can craft a bill, and they've been doing this for years, that has major consequences and repercussions for noncompliance, but is also vague and very overly broad, then you're just going to have individuals who would rather not risk noncompliance, and they just engage in self-censorship.
Right.
Because it is not worth the risk. They comply in advance, if you will, for something they don't need to comply with, because they're worried about tripping this vague, very broad law that can get them removed from office if they promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, there are a lot of carve-outs in the bill, a lot. The carve-outs are so complicated, most people can't follow them. And if there's that many carve-outs, it's like if you have a poison apple and you just like cut all the way around it and you chip it down because you think that somehow if you slice off all of these really, really bad toxic pieces, then what's at the core will still be okay to eat.
Right.
It's not. The bill is rotten at its core.
Right.
And the carve-outs did not make it a good bill. It doesn't cover Black History Month, for example.
Right.
Okay, great, but it does cover other things.
Right. Well, my understanding, I spoke to a colleague of yours in the Senate, and what I was told was that when the questions were being asked about the bill, that people would say, well, what about Black History parades? And then they'd make a caveat for that. Or what about this? And they'd make a caveat for that. So that's in some way how some of the caveats came to be in that, or carve-outs in that bill, in that law came to be, which is bizarre. That's not logical.
It is. And I will pretend to not be personally offended by the fact that it is just overtly anti-queer and anti-LGBTQ. And that was really exposed through the lawmaking process, through the sausage making process, because when I asked the sponsor, questions like, wait, so does this anti-DEI bill mean that a local government would not be allowed to use taxpayer money to, say, have a membership at the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce? He would say, no. Oh, no, of course. No, they can pay for the city's membership in the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Absolutely. Can they pay for the membership in the Black and African American Chamber of Commerce? Oh, absolutely. The Asian American Chamber? Oh, yes, absolutely. Okay, so what about the Pride and LGBT Chamber of Commerce? No, that's not allowed.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, but they can issue a Black History Month proclamation, right? Yes. They can issue a Hispanic Heritage Month proclamation, right? But can they issue a Pride Month proclamation? No, that's not allowed. Oh, I see.
Well,
I see what
it's very much aligning personal views with state law. And again, an erosion of home rule, because shouldn't individual communities shouldn't everybody be protected by law, right? But in addition to that, shouldn't individual municipalities get to choose based on the residents in their municipalities what they support and what they don't?
Absolutely. To reflect the values of their own community.
Right.
We have a separation of these governments for a reason.
Right.
We have our local elected leaders and we have our state.
Right.
And many times they have different values. They come from different political parties. And that's how our democracy thrives. And that's how it works well.
Right. So it's frustrating and sad to me, I guess. I'm trying to stay positive and keep fighting for what I know is right. So I guess that's how I'd like to end, is to get some advice for me and my colleagues who are struggling to overcome the challenges that keep coming. What would you say to us?
Well, I would say that there is a lot of hope, because what we're seeing is a lot of people are kind of tired of these culture wars. They're tired of all of these anti-diversity attacks. They just want to get back to some kind of normalcy, particularly in the state of Florida, that we're actually addressing real problems. Look, I mean, obviously I'm a politician, I'm a state senator, so I often talk about things and I put them in the context of what my experience has been in public service. And I'll tell you this, I served in the Florida House of Representatives for 6 years. I represented this community well. And then in 2022, they drew new political maps and I was gerrymandered out of my seat. I lost my House reelection in 2022 after attacks on me personally, homophobic attacks that were part of the campaign. A lot of stuff that just was messed up. But when I lost my reelection to the state house, I didn't give up. I did not get discouraged. I did not let this one setback be my entire story. And I saw it as one door closing and another one opening. I announced that I was going to run for Senate, and now I'm a state senator. So it just goes to show that you should never give up. You should never get discouraged, even in the face of a lot of the toxic politics that we're seeing out there, because ultimately the people will prevail. I get the sense that this year the pendulum is swinging in a different direction, and there's a lot of people that are going to be helping to push that pendulum in a new direction.
I hope you are right, and I am fighting to retain my hope for what we've built, and will continue to do so. And I'll use that thought in my head as a motivation and share it with my colleagues, because I think remembering that 1 or 2 losses doesn't equal a failure. It just means you got to move in a different direction. So, Carlos, Senator
some gray hairs
Smith,
on my head.
Yeah, it's already all there for sure. I want you to know, Senator Smith, how much this meant to me. I can't thank you enough for carving out the time in your schedule to talk to me today.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me on. And I'm looking forward to seeing you soon back in Tallahassee when we continue advocating for so many things.
And then after we see some pendulum swinging, I'll invite you back and we can celebrate together.
That's right. I love it.
All right. So again, thank you so much. So for my audience that's watching or listening, thank you so much for joining me and Senator Carlos Smith for our podcast episode today. I hope you will subscribe to the podcast, share anything that you found helpful. If you have an idea for a topic or a guest, feel free to email me at marjorie@artsgarage.org. Otherwise, we will see you in the next episode. And Senator Smith, I'll see you in Tallahassee.